Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to tell you a story. This happened actually this past Friday. If you're sitting there, how many of you have recently moved? Anybody recently moved? Jump in the chat, talk to me. How many of you have recently moved and you know what? You went through all the trouble, getting a truck, all that kind of good stuff. Well, you know what? There's no kind of moving like moving with your in-laws. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they were moving just this last Friday, and they said, hey, will you show up to this storage unit? So I show up to this storage unit, and I drive a 1991 Volvo 240, got 350,000 miles, and I'm creeping around this place because I'm lost. At the time, I'm on the phone with the leaseholder of my building in my day job. And one of the things that was amazing, as I'm driving around, I'm trying to talk with him. I see in my side mirror, there is a golf cart and he's coming in hot. I'm talking about golf cart just blazing ahead. And I'm looking over and I'm like, this golf cart, maybe he's trying to pass me. I'm barely going fast at all. Why? I'm just trying to find my brother-in-law. I couldn't seem to, and the golf cart pulls up. I roll down the window. I'm still on the phone because I'm very curious of what's going on. He comes to my window and he is yelling at me significantly, like he's trying to get my attention. Why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you on my property? He is blazingly giving me these questions. Why didn't you check in at the office? What are you here to do? Who are you here to see? He's all in my face. And as this is happening, I don't exactly know what to do. I'm stuck because I've got my landlord on the phone, and this man is treating me like I've already broken 7 laws. I just showed up to throw my back out by helping my in-laws, right? I was actually there to get something a little more than that. I responded to him and said, sir, I've been lost, and I'm just trying to find him. I can't seem to figure it out. Well, there's only 2 groups that are moving out. Why can't you find them? Well, I've never been here before. Why didn't you come into the office? There's no signage that shows it. I'm growingly getting ashamed, and I'm angry, and I'm shaking, and I'm frustrated. He says, who do you know that has property here? I looked at him, I said, my brother-in-law's name. He said, oh, well, they might actually be moving out today. Find me in the office. Turns around, whips around his golf cart, just whips it. I turn my car around. My landlord says, John, you need me to come to Oklahoma City and kick somebody's. I was glad for my friend that day, but I said, let me call you later. Brother-in-law calls me. He said, John, where you at? I tell him. I walk into the office. He said, oh, those folks are actually moving out today. Well, you should have just come in here in the first place. I said goodbye. See, I was shaking mad that day, but I had a back to throw out. You know what I'm saying? I had to help them move. They had 3 storage units. Some people carry a lot of stuff. Love you, bro, but you got a lot of stuff. You know, it was the most interesting thing because that evening there was a fantasy football draft. Randy was talking about proximity. This draft is from many of my fraternity brothers from college. It's been, 15 years of knowing these guys. And it was amazing as the draft walks in, I'm decked out head to toe, Saints gear, baby. Let me tell you what, New Orleans all day long. As we were having a great time, I couldn't shake the feeling of what was on my mind that day. We're sitting here at the table and we're drafting. And as I'm drafting my players, all of my fraternity brothers, many of which, the majority of which are white, they sit around and they said, John, how you doing? See, there was a moment there. That how you doing was a loaded moment. What do I say? Do I tell them the truth? Did I tell them the truth that I felt anxiety and anger and frustration? Do I push it down one more time? And yet I call these guys brother. This was my chance. Because I'm now in proximity that Randy talked about, I tell them, I said, guys, for far too long, I've robbed you of the ability to actually know what's going on in my life. Today, that changes. So I share. I tell them about the whole story. There were about 5 different responses that I received. Some of you might have been in one of these spots. One of which was sadness. Man, John, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Another, paralysis. I can't believe that was your reality today. Or another, allyship. My homeboy said, you know what? We ain't never doing business with that storage unit ever again. He's ready to go right, like, let's go. He was ready to take action. He's also an attorney, and he's always ready to take action because that's just something that they do. You know, a fourth, he looked at me in the eye and he just said, man, I hate that you have to deal with that. I felt empathy in that moment. And then a final, it was all about the conversation. He looks around at all the guys at the table and he says, I don't know about y'all, but I've never had to deal with that. That message that he gave, that desire to step his foot out, to engage, to show up, I mean, that was a gift. Because it means he wasn't unwilling to get uncomfortable. You see, our whole world is dealing with these challenges, and you might be dealing with them also. And you might be thinking, man, racism, this is a lot. These difficulties, the tensions, the differences, all of the stretching, all of it, it seems to just take so much time. You might be sitting there thinking, man, I am exhausted from racism. I'm so sick of dealing with it. You'd think we'd be done by now. See, what we know is that this takes time. In all of our organizations, each of us are walking through a moment that takes time. That time that we are taking, that we're investing, is a lot like working in the garden, fostering a different culture for our society, for our kids, for our posterity, for our employees, for our neighbors. Some of y'all might need to foster something else in your family because Thanksgiving is coming, y'all, and you better get ready. The conversations will abound. See, when it comes down to this, it is difficult. But gardening is also kind of difficult. It requires that you put your hands in the ground and do something in order for things to thrive. Early in the pandemic, shelter in place, I wasn't dealing well. We were feeding more people at the charitable feeding organization I was at previously, more than we'd ever done before. I had crippling anxiety. My wife looks at me one day lovingly and said, baby, you got to get a hobby. If we ain't going nowhere, you're going to have to get it together. Not in an ugly way, but she was right. I was stressing too much. So I decided to take a dose of green thumb therapy. And green thumb therapy taught me a whole lot of things. What are the things that thrive in the sunlight? What are the things that thrive in the shade? What needs more water? What kind of soil do we need in order to make this work? I also learned a whole lot about pollinators. See, pollinators are the unsung hero of the natural world, or as I like to describe them, the bridge builders of the natural world. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the food we consume is dependent upon pollinators. Pollinators, you could think of lots of them. In my conversations, think about 4, and today I'm only going to tell you about one of them, but more of that to come. You know, I think about this gardening. I think about the fact that it happened at the height of 2020. There's a lot of people got into it. And I think about the pollinators that I just referenced. I think about how many people go into working on gardens realizing that it's the pollinators that are providing more work than we'll ever realize. And when I think about those pollinators and I think about bridge builders, I also think about this question. So I don't want to just talk at you. I want to invite you in the discussion. Will you answer this question for me? Within your organization, can you describe the flowers that you're working to cultivate? What are those things that you're working to see flourish? What are those things that you're hoping to make a reality this time next year, who are those folks that are helping you get there? Who are your pollinators to help get you there? I wonder. As you were hopping there in the chat, I saw somebody who is talking about employee potential. That's the flower you're trying to bring out of the ground. You see, I believe that it's pollinators, unity and mission. These are the flowers that we're working to cultivate in our soil. Another way to describe pollinators in our working environment, I like to think of them as bridge builders. They're bridge builders. Bridge builders are people that use empathy, experiences, and relationships to bridge across conflicting views and challenges. Some of y'all might want to see that up close. Bridge builders. These are people that use empathy, experiences, relationships to bridge across conflicting views and challenges. We need bridge builders. All of our organizations need bridge builders. It is critical that we have them. Why? Like pollinators, they help our organizations thrive. But the truth is, much like that conversation I had Friday night with my brothers there, everybody's going to do it in a different way. I told you that I'd tell you about one particular pollinator. That one particular pollinator that I think of as the champion in this world, the bee. You see, honeybees, we also oftentimes know, honeybees are strong. Honeybees provide unbelievable value. They work interdependently. They are relational creatures. It's pretty amazing when you see a honeybee in action. Honeybees oftentimes do us the grand favor of making sure that we thrive. But they also are doing this in concert with lots of people. I think about the bridge builders that take on the characteristics of the honeybee. This is that person that's the industrious collaborator, that person who's willing to help roll out that new initiative, that individual who is there to do the work. They're going to read the books. They're going to set up the affinity groups. They're going to show up on time, set up the meeting, have the discussions. They're willing to challenge the status quo through hard work, and they realize it's a long game they're working for, and the victories are small. But that particular pollinator, that bridge builder, they got some threats. Two in particular: indecision, number one, and toxicity. Indecision, man, the hand wringing. You know what? We got to get this perfect. We got to get this perfect. Or worse yet, a person who doesn't think it through and they just jump in and do it anyway, unthoughtfully. Either case, it creates a toxic environment around that DEI initiative or whatever initiative you're trying to roll out. Hey, guess what? It's not perfect. This idea that we somehow can't take all the time, so we take too much time and we get paralysis. For this bridge builder, they are built to act. I think of that person who says, you know what? This is not an initiative. This is my life. This is that minority that shows up to work and they said, yeah, I'll help with this initiative for DEI. But guess what? I can't talk about this as if it doesn't matter. We can't start and then stop and then act like it doesn't matter. This is my life. I'm dealing with this every day. That person that lets you know that, man, I can't do this alone. When I get a side swipe and someone comes at me sideways, I need leadership to help make sure that I'm covered. Man, I really appreciate the fact that you want to do this, but you can't assume I'm willing to do it for free. The person that says, do you know what it cost me to go through that trauma that taught me that lesson? You see, we all are showing up differently as bridge builders, but what I want you to hear are two things. Number one, that we can all be bridge builders. We'll all do it differently. And number two, if you've committed to DEI, if you've committed to belonging, it's going to take some time. And that time, well, it's a lot like a garden. It's worth it because flowers grow when we take that time.